Hello and welcome to the Undercut podcast. I'm your host, Thiemo Albers-Daly, and we are back to review the 10th round of the 2025 Formula One season, the Canadian Grand Prix. Joining me to do this is friend of the show and on the co-host pub chat co-host Jacob Phillips. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Tima. How are you doing?
Not too shabby. Nice weekend of motorsport action across the board, really, to keep us all satisfied, and some of us quite knackered because we're not just joined by Jacob today, we're also joined by Chief Feeder Series Editor for Pit Debrief and Deputy Editor, easy for me to say, at Fastest Formula News, Chiara Martin. How are you?
I would say good, but I am still very, very, very tired after staying awake for, I think, 22 and a half hours was that? I was on duty live reporting.
Almost disappointing that you didn't make it to 424 when you were that close. I mean, rookie error there, not making it to 424 game 22 hours in. Oh, what's that about?
Listen, at some point you have to go back to your room and get ready for the next day so you don't look too insane when the podium happens. Because you don't want to be that person who gets caught in the camera just asleep on the ground somewhere, do you?
Kind of do want to be that person, but I think that's where we differ
I
in our
didn't.
approaches.
I did not want to be. I was seen on the balcony, but that was still throughout the day. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, I need to find a way to wake myself up. And I think a cold shower did that.
Cold
It
shower and
usually
coffee
does
is
the
always the
trick.
way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cold shower and coffee, Red Bull. I mixed coffee and Red Bull. I just alternated between the two at some point.
Wow.
Lots of sugar. Yeah.
That, yeah, that's. I don't have a segue for that for the bit of news that we've got to go straight into, but that's the effect of Le Mans for you. We've got too many things to talk about. It's all packed into one weekend, but we got a little bit of news ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix. Most of it actually related to Canada for a change in terms of the news being related to the Grand Prix that we're actually talking about, which is nice. First bit of news is a bit interesting though, because Dereck Warrick got suspended from the Canadian Grand Prix, which the FIA saying it's for comments that he made outside of kind of FIA-ness. Um, Although he's going to resume his duties as a steward from Austria onwards, he was replaced this weekend by Brazilian Enrique Bernoldi, who, as you definitely both know, raced for Arrows in 2001 2002. And he'd be officiating from the Remote Operations Centre in Geneva for the remainder of the event. Basically, all this is because Warwick was on a gambling website, of all places, and commenting about the whole George Russell Max Verstappen affair in Spain and saying, quote unquote, should he have done what he did in turn five with George Russell? Absolutely not. Did he get a penalty for that? Yes. It seems to me that although he dove in, he then did turn away from George, but momentum pushed him against George. It's absolutely the wrong thing, and the FIA was right to give him a penalty. Also apparently commented on the performance of Red Bull's second drivers and on Lewis Hamilton's situation at Ferrari. Before I come to you with this is also the second time that a driver steward has been punished by the FIA for commenting on races in the past 6 months after Johnny Herbert was robbed back in January for his duality of roles as a steward and a pundit, which I thought was a bit curious at the time, considering he'd been a pundit for quite a while and a steward for quite a while, so I don't know why it took them that long to notice, but that is just the FIA perhaps these days. Chiara, let's go to you first. What are your thoughts on that one?
I'm going to be honest with you both and say that I was awake at 3 a.m. when this came out initially. I was just about to go to bed, and then I got the FIA text message saying that this is what happened. So I had to get up again and just write it because no one else was awake. And I actually had to do research because unlike Warwick over here, I am not on any gambling website, so I did not know what he was talking about. And thank you to some publications that did report on it. I read what happened and I was like, okay, understandable. Did it have to be a gambling website? I guess on his end, yes. So I guess for him it was inevitable, but like you said, with the Johnny Herbert situation, I don't think you can really compare that because Johnny Herbert has been a pundit for quite some time. It just took a while for the FIA to clock.
Yeah, Jacob, it seems to me that it was obviously an unfortunate venue to be voicing said opinions, but at the same time, he was also just explaining exactly what happened and wasn't really
Mm,
being controversial at all. So I'm not quite sure
yeah.
what the problem is here. I mean, the Hamilton Red Bull thing, kind of understand, but at the same time, a bit odd.
Yeah, it's very odd. He's not. Well, I suppose that a publication is any publication. I don't know how many people have viewed the gambling site. I don't even know what the gambling site is, but what he said was essentially what happened, and he agreed. He backed up the FIA party line that it was a 10-second penalty, and Max was at fault, which I think most of us can agree with. Does he need to make those comments though? I'm not sure. Maybe he's best off not making those comments so he stays out of trouble. But he hasn't said anything untoward, and a one race ban. What's really or whatever he's given? He's given a one race off, if you like. Well, I don't really see the point in that. So for me, he's not done anything, as I said, untoward. So it's very strange. I'll compare it to football. I suppose that referees don't comment on other decisions, but I have seen it before. And I suppose that if he comments on the form of, say, for example, Red Bull and Ferrari, it's not related to any decisions and stuff that the FIA have control over, really. So yeah, it's all a bit odd.
Got to say, when we were making our predictions for the weekend, Jacob, when we said about anyone getting a race ban, we didn't have him on our bingo card, so we got close,
Right.
but we're also way off.
I mean, I
Um,
don't know how good your editing skills are, Thiemo, but you can always go back and re-edit that one, right? Give me a point somehow.
retroactively kind of do that. Yeah, I'll look into that.
Well, how much
Um,
money? How much money do you want?
well, let's see what the gambling website in question offers, and we can see what we can work out from there, I suppose. Uh, in other news, though, F1 Academy, we were talking about this as well in our preview. We didn't have a calendar for next year, despite having a calendar for just about everything else. But we do know one place they're going to be racing in 2026, which is Canada, because they've made a 3-year deal with the circuit there to race for 26, 27, and 28. And obviously, we saw 3 races there last weekend with Pim, Tolmeyer, and Chambers taking victory each. I'm quite happy about it. I thought that was probably one of the best, if not the best, rounds of F1 Academy we've had to date. So I'm not really complaining on that one. You two pretty much singing from the same hymn sheet, or did one of you hate it?
Um, I quite enjoyed it, and those who have heard my opinion on here before, and I know especially you, Timo, will know that I've not always been the biggest fan of F1 Academy because I think that they can certainly be more powerful, more raceable cars. But we've had circuits that really haven't worked. But I did tune into 2 of the 3 races this weekend, and I do agree with you, Timo. For me, it's been the best F1 Academy action I've seen in the 2 or 3 years it's been running. Certainly the 2 or 3 years that it's been televised. It was fantastic. It was allowed a lot of close racing. A lot of the racing was very, very tight at the front. There was a lot of drama as well, a lot of chaos. Yeah, it was fantastic. It's certainly the best that the series has raced. And it's good news that we do have some news because, as we were saying on the preview episode, not that it was that concerning, but we thought that all the other calendars have been sorted out. There must be a reason why this one hasn't. So, a bit of good news. At least we know we're heading somewhere next year, and who knows? Maybe we'll have 10 rounds in Canada. That won't be the worst thing to ever happen.
We can start doing it backwards at that point as well. Kiara, are you happy with the news?
I was very happy with the news because I do have to agree that I think this circuit did suit the F1 Academy car a lot more than I would say Jeddah did, for example, because I did not know why they were there. But I also tuned into 2 of the 3 races as I was on Le Mans duty, and I did watch the qualifying. And of course, I thought 3 races would have been quite stressful. I have to admit that knowing how the weather is like during the Canadian GP, I was like, oh no, if it's gonna rain again, then we might have the same issue where 1 race will be cancelled, and we'll have 4 F1 Academy
And so we
races
did
the
joke about
next
this in the
time
preview
that
going, we're
they're
going to have like
about.
10 rounds in Zandvoort, and then it's Zandvoort, oh no, the weather here is really terrible. What do we
Don't know.
do?
I don't know if anyone wants that.
And so I was quite thankful when my friends who went as fans reported back that, oh, it's really sunny. We didn't even need the ponchos anymore. And I have to say, it was sunny all across the board, even in Le Mans, where it was raining last year and I needed my winter jacket. I was outside in a dress and it was very, very hot.
Yeah, and I think just to reiterate the points that you two are both making there, it is one of these circuits that obviously it suits it for the racing style, but it's also one of these tracks where it helps test their skills and teach them about consequences and staying clean. There is a bit of runoff, but only in certain areas. And if you get it wrong in the wrong place, then you really do bite it. But if you get it wrong in some other areas, it's not as bad. And we saw plenty of examples of that. So I think it kind of combines everything you need nicely for a feeder series and for drivers that maybe don't have too much experience in single seats, if any at all, coming into this. So very happy with that indeed. Last bit of news that we do have to talk about is semi-related, and it's just the good news that Abbi Pulling has signed up with Nissan. The Formula E team have signed her as their rookie and simulator driver on a multi-year deal, and she'll also take part in the all-female Formula E rookie test alongside Ella Lloyd, who's also in F1 Academy this year, obviously from McLaren. So good news, and hopefully translates into a seat for next year. But that's maybe me just trying to get ahead of things because I still think it's nice to have the tests, but then actually use that for something and put one of them in one of the seats proper for the season next year. The Canadian Grand Prix did happen, and as you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording, Chiara, it was not a classic. It wasn't the worst Grand Prix we've had this year by a long stretch, thank God. But it also did rely a little bit like Spain on some last minute drama, which came to us this week courtesy of McLaren. So we'll talk about them first in our team by team analysis. Piastri qualified in third, Norris qualified in seventh, Piastri then finishing in P4, Norris DNFing rather spectacularly. Jacob, I'll come to you first. Not quite McLaren's weekend at all from start to finish, really.
No, and it was a welcome surprise that they weren't the fastest team. I think it's been the first time that they haven't been, or certainly not in and around even the podium spots, which is interesting. So it spiced things up that way. They were never really on the pace, and it must be circuit specific. It's the first proper low downforce track, or one of the low downforce tracks we've been to this season. So it'll be interesting to see when we head to more of them throughout the season. But yeah, it was never their race from minute one really. They did a decent job, I thought, in the race of just well until lap 67. One of the drivers didn't, but they did a decent job of maximising what they had. They thought, okay, there was a podium on the cards, but at the end of the day, it's going to be their drivers' championship and it's going to be their constructors' championship. So it was one of those days where all we needed to do is bring the cars home. But obviously, that's from the point of the team management and constructors. Obviously, we had Lando Norris trying to make a gain on his championship rival Oscar Piastri, and or at the time, there was only 10 points in it. But for me, that was one of the most stupid moves I think I've ever seen in Formula One, and I've seen some very silly moves. The old Ayrton Senna quote, isn't there? If there's a gap there, then, well, if you don't go for it, you're no longer a racing driver. But there wasn't a gap there. In fact, I've
So
never
the
seen
internet has
anyone.
very much jumped on that and going, make sure you go for a gap that doesn't exist is the new
Mm,
favourite quote for lots of people, which
maybe
is quite amusing.
maybe he misheard, but he certainly was quicker towards the end than Piastri. And at the end of the day, if he couldn't get Piastri, it's only 2 points. The lead would have been 12. The DNFs can happen throughout the summer break or whatever, or as we come up to the summer break, or whatever else. So it's not the end of the world. He now finds himself 22 points behind, and it's now Piastri's to lose. For me, and I've said this before, Thiemo off air, I haven't been on in quite a while for a review. So, and since I last was on, Lando Norris wasn't a championship favourite. He wasn't even in the picture. So for me, he's not championship material. I have no problem saying that. I think yesterday backed up the points I've been making throughout the last 18 months. There were maybe other opportunities. Maybe you should have waited a lap and tried down the back straight again, but certainly not there. It was desperate. It was late. It was never on, and quite frankly, it was a little bit embarrassing from the championship protagonist. So yeah, not a great look for Lando, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Chiara, it's a bit of a rookie mistake that wasn't needed so much. And I think when you compare it with how Piastri was driving in that race, particularly like we were saying, they weren't really on the pace all weekend up to that point. So they should have been doing damage limitation. On the one hand, I can understand racing your teammate, your main championship rival for it, but it's a bit of an odd and curious place to try and make that overtake work. And I just hope for his sake that he doesn't do what we've seen him do many times before, which is then stew on this and then it impacts future Grand Prix. Do you think he, from the immediate kind of taking responsibility of it and knowing that he buggered himself essentially, that that's not going to happen this time and he should be back to kind of the new normal come Austria, or is this going to fester, do you think?
If I am being honest, I have to agree with Jacob in the sense that I don't actually think Lando Norris is also championship material, and that is exactly why I don't think he's championship material. I understand that there's always going to be mental strain when you are in a position to potentially win a championship. I'm not saying he's a bad driver. I'm just saying he's making these silly mistakes that Max Verstappen isn't making. Max at this point is out driving that Red Bull if you compare, what's been going on. And I think with Lando, I am not sure if he has one actually, but maybe he would do good with a mental coach that a lot of athletes do benefit from to help him get through it because I think he locks in on these silly mistakes and then forgets how to drive. And you'll know it we'll know it. We'll see it in Austria when he fumbles a start. Because that's how it usually begins. You'll know he messed up a start, and then it will just go downhill from there. If he's lucky, he'll fight back, he'll find the pace and overtake. But these mistakes cannot happen if you want to be world champion, if you want to, be the best of everyone. And Oscar right now is calm. He keeps his head down. He stays away from as much drama as possible. And when he does, he doesn't really comment on it. And I think that's how you can tell the difference between their mental strength.
I think Piastri was definitely driving with that championship mentality, and you can tell that from the start when
Mhm.
Antonelli was making that pass on him, he had everything to lose. Antonelli had nothing to lose really by going for it. So that was kind of the give each other enough room, race hard, race fair, but go for it. Whereas Norris, yeah, I'm not quite sure what was going on there, to be honest, even up to that point. And a couple of the prior attempt at overtaking him was still a little bit reminiscent when he was trying to get past Hamilton and Saudi Arabia going, come on, you know better than this. This is not how that's going to work.
It
And
was
friend of the podcast and Lakeside Drive co-host, Freya Rosmer, she constantly says that you can't say that a driver loses a championship in a single moment over the course of the season, but there will definitely be a collection of moments when looking back, you can pinpoint these will definitely contribute to that. And if he's not champion at the end of the year, this is definitely going to be one of those moments.
it was very much an 11 o'clock move in is what is only 5 or 6 o'clock in the season. I would understand it if it was the last lap in Abu Dhabi and that was the last chance he ever had, but he's now essentially made it a lot more comfortable for Piastri. It's now, as I said before, 22 points, and the pressure's going to be on him every single race now. Even more increasingly, it's obviously going to be on. But should Piastri win next week, that or whenever it is, that'd be another at least 7 points on Norris because you can only get 18 points for second, and that's if he finishes second. So every week now is going to be that ever more bit pressurized for Lando, and I just don't think he can handle that. So he's had one big moment. Obviously, you saw him hanging his head there, and he didn't seem too angry or upset. It seemed like a moment of resignation for him that he realised that maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe he's content and calm with that. Who knows?
On the flip side of that, we had a surprisingly good weekend from Mercedes. Russell qualifying in first, finishing first, Antonelli qualifying fourth and finishing in third, and Mercedes also retaking P2 in the constructors as a result of all of this. That was perfect weekend for Mercedes as we could probably expect at the moment. It was a little bit like Mercedes of old, and obviously Antonelli obviously now becomes the third youngest podium sitter in F1 history. There's not too much to say on them for me because they just did a bang good job.
Yeah, it's a track that certainly suits the car. It suited the car last year. I think Russell was on pole there as well. They've reverted, I believe, back to a suspension they had when they were a little bit more competitive pre-Imola. So I think that's worked well for them there. Wasn't the hottest day out there. I know they suit better to colder or cooler temperatures. It's always been a track that they've gone well at. So it'll be interesting to see as we go through the next tracks if it's just a one-off or they've joined the fight at the front with the McLarens and Max. But yeah, it was a faultless day. It was great to see Antonelli on the podium. The fans chanting his name on the podium was one of the moments of the season for me, and it was a really commanding victory from George. So yeah, it was a fantastic weekend.
And Chiara, Antonelli driver of the day, first time this season that's actually made sense, I think, as well. So quite nice for that to finally come to fruition.
I haven't kept up with driver of the day ever since I think I don't even remember, but I remember in Australia, it just nothing made sense, and then this time Antonelli was, driver. Oh, I think wasn't Antonelli driver of the day in China? There you go. That did not make sense for me at all. I was
Yeah,
very
Yeah,
confused.
most of
And
them didn't make sense in the same way that Verstappen was driver of the day in Spain, and everyone's going, about that.
but I guess people were just messing with the order because I have to say, although George did have a commanding victory, I thought it was brilliant for Antonelli because he hasn't had such a good run during the triple header. I mean, not finishing in your home race must have been very tough for him. And then the incidents in Monaco, especially with Mercedes, I think forgetting their pit stops, the double pit stop situation that I did not enjoy. And Barcelona was just a whole story in itself. So now seeing them on that podium, hearing the German national anthem for the second time of the day, I thought was great. And hopefully they have found a little bit of their footing. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves with this one. We're not going to do a Nico Rosberg and claim that Mercedes is back. We're not brave enough for that. Ferrari, on the other hand, hmm, I mean, this is the weird thing, right? It's not bad, it's not great, but it could be a lot worse, and it does seem just so bizarre with what they're dealing with this season. And the way I've summed up Leclerc and Hamilton's Grand Prix here is it's Leclerc v Ferrari, and then because of course it is Hamilton versus a groundhog, because of all things to make his Grand Prix disintegrate essentially. We could see there was some kind of debris on the track, but we couldn't quite make out what it was. As it turns out, it was what was left of a poor groundhog that Hamilton mowed down early on in the race and has caused him to lose 20 points of downforce from his car. Um, Unfortunately, did hark back to, I think, the comment Oliver Behrman made to his race engineer in FP3, where he saw that there was the flag out for slippery surface, and it was because they didn't have a flag for telling people there's a groundhog on the track. And he went, well, it would be slippery if I hit it, I suppose. And but then about 24 hours later, we found out that, yeah, no, it probably is probably a little bit slippery, a bit messy. And Hamilton obviously devastated the fact that he took out a groundhog and that ruined his race. That being said, he finished in sixth after qualifying in fifth, and Leclerc finished in fifth after qualifying in eighth. So despite Ferrari trying to get in their own way and nature just being bizarre, still not the worst day in the office, but they could really do with not being so Ferrari and having a bit more good luck on their side, Chiara.
Oh my goodness. I
Yeah, where do
actually
you
had
start
to
there?
write about Hamilton. I had to write about Hamilton after the race, and I have to admit, I'm not really sure what is going on because clearly he's not adjusting very well. I put it on Hamilton just not switching teams because I had this discussion with someone yesterday where I feel like Carlos Sainz, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Carlos Sainz fan. I was just genuinely trying to decipher what's going on. I think Sainz is more adaptable in that Williams than Hamilton is with the Ferrari because Sainz is used to switching teams, whereas Lewis
Hmm.
Hamilton went from McLaren to Mercedes, Mercedes for a very long period, and now he's at Ferrari where everything is different. The team culture is different, different manufacturer in general, and I think he's quite lost. I'm not sure if he went into Ferrari thinking he's going to win his eighth world championship, but it's not, it could be worse. I just think it's disheartening for him to see George Russell and Kimi Antonelli do so well in a car that he was probably getting sick and tired of.
It is a curious one. I think if this is how badly he's doing, given everything, then I'm still not too worried about him. But as you say, it's concerning, and potentially just because he's not as adaptable or used to changing teams as someone like Carlos Sainz is. He was interviewed post race about, oh, are there any upgrades coming that could be helpful? And he goes, they're not really saying much about that. I keep asking, they're not getting back to me. I'm like, that's not a good sign. You need to sort that out pretty damn
Yes, I
quickly.
had that
Uh,
exact quote. Exactly that quote concerned me.
yeah. And on the flip side of that, Jacob, you've got then Professor oh so subtly throwing a bit of shade at, oh, whoever could it be, John Elkin, by saying, well, you're expecting us to win races, win championships, and in order to do that, you keep changing drivers, you keep changing the team principle. We're changing everything except one thing. It's kind of leaving that open for interpretation, but I think we're all interpreting that the same way. Vasseur shouldn't be in any danger, should he, really? If we're looking at it logically, they should just let him get on with it, build it like they did when Schumacher first came in. It took them a few years to get that sorted, but when they got it sorted, they went on a hell of a run. Why are they not just thinking that that should be the model to follow this time around?
I think it'd be very, very silly to to change up, and if they were going to do it, they'd probably have to do it now because we're heading into a rule set that's probably one of the biggest rule set changes we've had in F1 history. It's a chance to right the wrongs of the last 15 or so years where they haven't won a championship, and it's a clean slate. I was watching the broadcast for a little bit after the race yesterday, and I do agree with what they were saying on there that I think Ferrari now need to write off this season. I think there's one upgrade coming in Silverstone. Who knows what that's going to do? But it is slightly disappointing on Ferrari's part because if we remember back to the back end of 2024, they had the fastest car. At one point, it looked like they were going to win the Constructors' Championship ahead of McLaren. And for whatever reason, strategy or whatever else, they didn't. And this year, they've taken a few steps backwards. I know they've built essentially what is 75% a new car on what they had last year. I don't know. I don't know why they did that, but I think they've just got to press on with what they've got now. Hamilton will only get better from here, although I do agree that it has been a bit of a disappointing start from him. I do think that he could have done a little bit more, but yesterday he was accounted for with running over that groundhog, poor groundhog. There was one year I think where Vettel nearly ran over a seagull in a Ferrari. So animals always seem to play a part on this track. But yes, not the worst day for Ferrari, but it does get compounded a little bit more because their main rivals Mercedes picked up a 1-3. So actually, when you look at it on face value, not so bad, but when you dig a little bit deeper, it's not the greatest day for Ferrari, I would say.
Wasn't Ferrari's day, and definitely wasn't Groundhog Day either. Red Bull, on the other hand, you've got Verstappen being a very well-behaved chap, and it served him very well in terms of the championship overall, I think. He obviously qualified in second, finished in second, whereas Yuki Tsunoda, I'll get to you, Jacob, don't worry, I know you want to say some things, qualified in 20th, finished in 12th. Chiara, after all the stuff from Spain, Verstappen just decided I can just behave, and I'm kind of going to troll you all by being just really good and just keeping my head down and getting on with it. And it served him really, really well.
I described it as George and Max Verstappen being a divorced couple, and their son was Kimi Antonelli. That was that
Well, they
was
did
my
seem
whole
quite
comment
amicable on the
on.
podium, didn't they? It was kind of like, oh, all
They
of the stuff
did,
from
even
before
in
is
the
gone.
cool
It's like
down
very
room.
chummy, chummy.
Because I think Max, that's how you know he's a champion because he does have his aggressive moments, and we saw that, and he was penalized for it, and he is close to a race ban. One small mistake, penalty point, he's out. But he knows how to rise above it and remind us all of what he can do. So even if that race ban will come, and I feel like it could, he's still a
Fixing it for
champion.
Zandvoort.
That would be funny if he misses out on Sanford. But and I don't hope that on him, but he knows he's on thin ice in this situation, and all he can do is really keep it clean. And if something happens, I think he's gonna take it like a champ and, hope that the person who will take over for him will do a good job.
I think it'll be very
Which
interesting
teased
to
me.
see how Red Bull fare without Verstappen. Maybe put Hajar and alongside Sonoda, and you're looking at maybe two Red Bulls who don't get out of Q1 or certainly not Q2. So I do want to see it. Although I did hear your comment there about Zandvoort. I do not think the FIA will have the balls to ban Max Verstappen before Zandvoort. I would not make that a crazy prediction. That's for sure.
No, maybe not, but that's why I'm here. I like to throw that banner in the works there. But I'll throw it to you then, Jacob. Yuki Tsunoda, if you go.
Um, yeah, it's not looking good, is it? We do like to give drivers a chance. And normally I like to say, well, let's see how they do to the summer break, but I can't bite my tongue for much longer because although we
Won't be any
know
tongue
that
left.
no, there won't be any tongue left, exactly. And I won't be able to speak, will I? Yeah, time's running out for him, certainly, for giving him a chance. I don't know if time's running out from him actually contractually and actually being in that seat, but I think the critics will start flying in. Um, it's not much better than Lawson was at the start of the season. Obviously, we know the problem that all these drivers have had with the second car. they're not. Well, the first problem is the car maybe isn't suited to them, and the second problem is, well, they're just not Max Verstappen, and they're quite frankly nowhere near him, talent wise. I don't expect him to win races. Actually, if we're being honest, Sergio Perez probably out of the second drivers within this sort of era of F1 did the best in that seat. He won a couple of races and was on the podium near enough, sort of one in every four races. But these drivers are nowhere near. In fact, we're not even getting points with Tsunoda. He's got 10 points. Hulkenberg has got, and he's having a fantastic season, by the way. We'll get to him, but he's got 20 points in a kick Sauber, and Lance Stroll has got 12 points in an Aston Martin, and three of Yuki Tsunoda's points have been at Racing Bulls. So just not good
Yeah,
enough.
I think it's one of those things. Even if the car isn't up to par, it still shouldn't be getting overtaken by a kick Sauber. Is where I stand
Not
on that.
not at all. He should be getting minimum. And the top eight cars, the top four teams are still miles ahead of the rest of the pack on a normal weekend. So at very least, he should be getting P8. I mean, Max Verstappen, we know, does wonders with that car, and in my opinion, he does push that car beyond the limits of what it's capable sometimes. But yeah, P8, and you're going to get weekends where Williams are up there, and you're going to get weekends where Racing Bulls and Fernando Alonso puts in a performance like yesterday. But at very least, he needs to be on the top 10, and I don't know how it continues from here. That Red Bull were going to finish fourth again. I think that will be, where did they finish last year? Was it third? But yeah, it's certainly not where they want to be. So Max, it's a one car team. The only benefit of Yuki Tsunoda being there and then being in fourth is they'll get a hell of a lot of wind tunnel time for the new regulations next year.
Yeah, it's one of those Grand Prix again, Vera, where stuff happens near the front of the field, and just by being near 10th, ninth place is going to be good enough to help push you up there. It seems to be Esteban Ocon's bread and butter, which we'll get to him in a little bit. He just kind of pops up at the end of the Grand Prix going, I'll take those points, thank you very much. And everyone goes, how the hell did you get there? And really, nothing against Ocon, but that should be Sonoda doing that, considering he's in a Red Bull. And even if he's, like you say, not up to par, and we're not expecting wins or points from him, he still should be able to do this sort of thing. So where do you stand on how he's doing? Because I think with Lawson, with Hadjar, with Perez to an extent, definitely last year, there weren't many issues. Whereas this was like there's a lot of experience in that driver, and he was saying, "Go on, give it to me. Let's have it." And they gave it to him, and he's gone, "Oh shit."
Oh dear. I'm going to stand by my statement I made when Lewis Hamilton was announced for Ferrari. I think they should have taken Sainz back. That's what I'm gonna say. Because Sainz has proven to be a really good second driver, and I think he would have done well alongside Max Verstappen. I'm not gonna say that Sainz would have won a championship with it, would have outperformed Max Verstappen in, because at the end of the day, Max Verstappen is our one of a kind prodigy of our lifetime, I would say. And I think he would have just fared so much better because I don't think Yuki Tsunoda, like it or not, I never thought he was going to be ready for that Red Bull seat. I think they never wanted him in that Red Bull seat. Even
They
now,
really
I
tried
think they
not
just
putting him
put,
in it.
yeah, they tried not putting him in, and I think that shows enough. Now that he's in it, Tsunoda's not really doing anything, as Jacob said, to impress us all. I think there should be more to it. I have a feeling if Max Verstappen does end up at the race ban, they're gonna ask Hadjar to move up.
Hmm.
I think it's not gonna be it's not gonna be Lawson. If it is Lawson, I'd be fairly surprised. But we also know that Hadjar has mentioned he's not ready, or he's scared of that Red Bull second seat and doesn't want it right now. No one wants it.
I'm liking Hadjar more and more than I ever did last year with comments like this as well added on top. It's quite surprising, but I'm on board with
Really?
it.
I always liked Hadjar. I always liked giving him a hard time during those
I,
F2 press conferences.
Oh, I, I enjoy. He was entertaining, but I didn't enjoy him from like a. Oh, get on with it! Stop moaning all the bloody time. But you're on the radio, stop screaming every 5 seconds. But he's apparently he still does that, but he doesn't broadcast it as much. Which fair enough, he's learned. But with his performances, he's done much better than I thought he would. And with him having the sensibility to go, don't put me in that seat, please. I'm quite
Who
happy
wants
where I
it?
am.
Who do we think is gonna be? Who do we think is going to be good in that seat? Who were your
Well,
options?
my options still go and stick Daniel Ricciardo in it for the last half season, and at least we can put that to bed once and for all, and we're satisfied with knowing what he could have done in that
Thiemo,
car, and then we can just have a clean slate. Just let me have it, Jacob. Just let me have the
you're
hard
you're
season.
never giving up on it.
Never. Like the Black Knight from Monty Python. Never given up on that one. But we'll move on. We've talked about Carlos Sainz. He had a frustrating weekend. So did Williams as a whole, really. Albon qualified in ninth, DNF with another PU issue. Sainz qualified down in P16 and then finished in 10th. Not ideal. Both drivers quite angry and a bit of a shame after what was looking like it could have been a good weekend for them because they were second and third in FP1 and everyone went, "Oh, hang on." And then it turned out that was the peak of the weekend. So, yeah, not really that much to say there, I don't think, Chiara, but I don't think we can read too much into it, although the PU issue is concerning.
I don't want to say it's concerning. I think
It's because you're a
I think
Sainz fan, an Albon fan.
no, I never said I was an Albon fan. I do enjoy Alex Albon, and I think it's like the team of former Red Bull juniors. I have a thing for Red Bull juniors, I've discovered, because I like keeping up with their performances because they have a lot. I think in Monaco when Joshua Dirksen said which Red Bull, there's so many there's so many Red Bulls during that race. I came to a point of realization that they do have a lot of drivers on their roster. And now the latest fad is Arvid Lindblad, right? But
You're
with
going to enjoy
Williams,
one of the fantasy F1 teams that we've got later that we're going to mention. So that's what I'll say now to remember it for
oh
later.
yay,
Go on, though.
yay! But with Williams, I think they've shown a lot of improvement from last season. That's a
Mm.
given. Now that Logan Sargent isn't there, now that I mean Franco Colapinto even gave us hints of hope last season when he came on for Logan Sargent, right? And now with Carlos Sainz, everyone was like, "Oh, we can get on the podium, or it's going to be much more than that." But at the end of the day, the decision to bring on Carlos Sainz was for development purposes to prepare for 2026, which they were also very open about. So I think we're gonna have moments where we see both of them doing brilliantly. Maybe we could have a podium because there have been times where it could have been close, but this track would have suited them because we all know that Williams on a straight is fast. So it was quite disappointing. I think that was the disappointing part, knowing that the track was suited to the car that they usually have, and it just did not work out. But hey, we got a point. It's a point, but a point is a point.
One more point than Sonoda got for Red Bull. And I think that if
Exactly.
they can qualify well in Spa, maybe, then Alex Albon can make his car as wide as he usually does in such situations, and maybe that's where we get a podium or two. On the other side of things, though, Jacob, Haas 200th Grand Prix, Behrman qualified 13th, finished 11th, Ocon qualified 14th, somehow finished in ninth, got some points for them. Nice livery commemoration there. 200th Grand Prix, as we mentioned in our preview. Not too bad.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the weekend they'd hoped for on their 200th start. Yeah, they're plodding along nicely, aren't they? They're certainly having a very stellar season, keeping themselves firmly cemented in P6, which would be a fantastic result if we get to Abu Dhabi and they remain there. I came into the season not too fussed with the driver lineup, but they've certainly proven me wrong. Ocon's doing a fantastic job. I think he sits is it P10 or 11 in the drivers' championship. He's got a whole host of points, isn't he? And he's sort of there or thereabouts most weeks when Haas have the car. Obviously, when they don't have the car, there's not much he can do. But when they do have the car, sorry, he's there to capitalise, which is certainly good. He appears more consistent, is making less errors than he ever used to, which is good. And Behrman is a great driver in the other seat as well. So yeah, I think it's the best they can hope for. Obviously, with the top cars up there, P8, P9 is all they can hope for. Maybe they would have wanted to have beaten the Aston Martin and the Sauber, but they're not going to complain, I don't think, with a couple of points coming away from Canada.
No, I think you just got to be in the right place at the right time. And they were. On the other flip side of that, though, Kira, Racing Bulls, weekend to forget for them, really. Lawson qualified 18th, DNF, Hadjar qualified in 12th, finished in P16, and didn't make any new friends over the weekend with his various antics. I think just a bit of an outlier for them.
Yeah, I would say this was, well, let's ignore Lawson side because whenever I think of
Gosh,
racing bulls, my eyes are on Hajar because I think Lawson has just lost his spark after his whole ordeal last season and always coming on and then being announced in Red Bull and then that being taken away after just a mere two
driver
races.
management 101, how to get it done. Yes.
Exactly. I learned so much from them. I'm going to take this on in my next career. I'm going to tell you guys that now. But yeah, I think for Hadjar it was inevitable. I mean, it is still racing bulls. We're not talking about a high performance team right now. They were always quite strong in the midfield. I'm going to give them that, especially when Gasly was on there as well. But I think Hajar has. This was the race that showed Hajar was still a rookie. We saw that in Australia. Then he bounced back from that quite well because with Hajar, you can see that he's happy to be there no matter what's going on. He's had a bad race. Okay, he'll learn from that, smile, and say, I still had fun. I was racing alongside Lewis Hamilton. With Liam Lawson, you can tell that the man's aging. I don't know if you guys ever look at that, but
I feel
he's
like he'll be in a bar somewhere having a drink after that Grand Prix, and Lando will walk in and will go, I've been waiting for you. I'll pour you one.
Sounds like a cracking pub
yeah.
chat episode, that.
To be a fly on the wall for
Yeah, we
that
have to
situation,
clip
Jacob.
mics. Let's clip mics onto both of them and see what happens during that conversation. Because where
Camera
Lando
pans up and it's just
has
Jacob as the
good
barman.
races and has been on the podium, we thought Liam Lawson is finally gonna give us that performance and maybe give us a 1-2 or at the very least, place in the top five or even the top 10. But he didn't. He's just not making the strides we hope. And I think if anything, Hajar is gonna, I would say after Spa, Hajar is gonna consistently outperform and really take in because he's so moldable. I think that's what makes Hajar brilliant drivers. He came from, like you said, Thiemo, he came from yapping and complaining and moaning a lot in F2 to being a very professional person and still having fun. Like he's enjoying being an F1 driver. And I think that helps him so much. And even if he has this bad race, which was really one to forget, he's gonna move on and we'll see him happy-go-lucky in Austria again, unless something dire happens, which knock on wood will not.
I think with Lawson, all we need to do is hire Sylvester Stallone to be his kind of motivational
My
coach, help
God.
with the mental toughness. We'll get some excellent content out of it as well, and then the rest of it will take care of itself from there. Aston Martin, meanwhile, Alonso qualified sixth, finished seventh. Stroll qualified 17th, finished 17th. And amusingly, you can apply Alonso's team radio here to both drivers' performances. We're here to race, not to test. Applies to Alonso for the racing, applies to Stroll for the testing. Alonso is nice to see him getting some more points on the board. Stroll got some more flack this weekend, not too surprising. Ocon, though, was defending him by saying how much he does love F1 and motorsport and how good he was in Leader Series, but that argument just doesn't hold water for me at all anymore. It was kind of fair enough the first couple of years he was in the sport, but that was 9 years ago now that he did kind of come into the sport and further back if you want any actual success with him. And Jacob, it feels a little bit like me saying to you how great I was at school in sports. Doesn't mean I'll still be good now. And kind of not a brilliant argument to put forward. And I mean, we said it before, we'll say it again. Just get rid of him already, for God's sake.
Well, I'm guessing by your football knowledge, not great, but we won't delve into that right now. I think you're being a bit harsh on Lance Stroll actually, Timo, because he did pick up points this weekend, but not the points that him and the team really wanted. Penalty points for that sort of pushing. Who was it onto the grass? He pushed someone onto the grass. Can't remember. Gasly onto the grass, I think it was. Um,
Possibly, yes.
I think I don't know how many times I've been on here and sort of wasted breath about Lance Stroll. I think you know my opinion, and for those who haven't heard my voice before, I don't think he's very good. He did surprise me at the start of the season with a few points finishes, and he has these races every now and again where actually I eat my words and he pops up in a P6, and he's actually not the worst driver I've ever seen in the wet either. Um, but consistency is key in motorsport, and he just doesn't have that. He's not the worst driver we've ever seen by a long stretch, but he's nowhere near the best either. And I think 9 years is a long time for someone that mediocre to be in F1. We know why he's there. We know why he's stuck around. and there's not much I can really say about him, to be honest. But just how can I say this politely? Go and find another form of motorsport, please.
Maybe he can go and help Yuki open up his restaurant in Las Vegas as he predicted in a couple of years' time, and that's how we get rid of those two together. Nick Sauber, meanwhile, more points for Hulk back to back in Spain as well now, so he's really on a bit of a charge. Nico Hulkenberg doing Nico Hulkenberg thing, qualified 11th, finished 8th. Bortoleto started in 15th, finished in 14th. I think Jacob, we're kind of taking what we can get with them, and they already at the start of the season did it way better than they did in the entirety of last season. So we're quite pleasantly surprised by this, and we'll not kind of say that they're back because they were never really there, but we'll take what we can get from them and not complain too much if and when they do revert.
And it's happening more than I expected it to as well. It's Hulkenberg's in third, fourth points finish. Yeah, they're certainly not back because, like you say, they were never ever there. But we take these small wins where we can. Hulkenberg has had a habit of doing this. Every midfield team he's been to, he's got fantastic results, just never got on the podium, which would be fantastic to see him do it this year. Although I don't think I've got any alcohol strong enough for me to actually believe myself saying that. It's been a fantastic start to the season by their expectations, certainly by ours as well. And I think that for them, it's just about gaining momentum now and putting every point they can on the board for sponsorship or whatever else for when they transition over to Audi. Bortoleto is not doing a bad job either. It's, again, as we know, a very hard car to drive. And I do believe, yes, it may take a bit of chaos, but I do believe at some point in the season, if this car gets ever so slightly better, and those cars sort of in and around fall off a little bit because they focus on 26 or whatever else, I do think that we will see Bortoleto get points somewhere along the line. So they are potentially my team of the season based on expectations for where we thought they would be. And it's a
It's not what
really
you thought you'd say at the start of the season, let's
no,
face
no,
it.
it really wasn't. I don't know what I said about them. I didn't have them getting many points. I thought Hulkenberg would because it's Hulkenberg, but they are, for me, nowhere near the worst team at the moment. And it is hard to place who the worst team at the moment, but it could well be the team we're coming on to next.
It's about to segue because Chiara, that 100 Grand Prix plan for Alpine is going oh so well. 100 start for the team this time out in Canada, and my note on them was they were also here. Gasly started in 19th, finished in 15th. Colopin co-qualified in 10th after some penalties and finished in 13th. It's going well.
Yeah, I mean, they still exist.
They celebrated
They
by
did
getting
not
rid of their
they,
CEO.
they did not DNF. That too, I found that out in real time. And yeah, I didn't expect them to do well this season, if I'm being honest, and that's proving a point already. However, I really, really, really do not want to diminish the brain of Flavio Briatore. It's just so confusing right
It
now. I
can take
don't
care
know
of
what.
itself on diminishing front, to be fair.
I have a feeling he does have something cooked up, but we're just not gonna see it this season. I don't know.
We're
I
going to find
don't
out
know
about
if
it
we're
2 years'
gonna
time
see
in court
Antonelli.
documents
Yeah,
instead.
well, probably, but I don't know if he's gonna keep on Colapinto quite long.
Well, he's only
If
got a few
his
races
rotation.
left on his contract before he switches in for Paul Aaron. So,
Yeah, but is he gonna go for Pollard and is he gonna put Kushmani up?
well, whichever
They
one he
have,
does, he'll do the
oh,
other one afterwards when they've done their 5 races. So,
and then they're gonna call in Doohan again. So it's like what musical chairs? I don't know. There's not much to comment on them except that they're last. Cool. The car's pretty. It has a nice color.
It's better
That,
than
that that
it's
was what
certainly a nice
annoyed me at
looking.
the start of the season. I saw Doohan in Australia with that livery, his helmets at the String Grand Prix. I thought that finally looks right, and then they've cocked it up ever since. Then I go, why must you do this to me every single time? But yeah, that's Alpine. They exist. Winners and spinners though for this weekend. I'll stick with you, Chiara. Who's your winner for this weekend?
Antonelli. 100% Antonelli. I always root for my feeder series. Boys, everyone knows that's dear and near to my heart. So to see someone at least, come on and actually say, hey, I'm an F1 and this is what I can do, that was a nice moment for me.
Absolutely. Jacob.
I've read the notes and I'm not going to steal your one. I was very tempted to, but we like to be different here on this podcast. So I'm going to say, proving he's still got it, fantastic drive for a rookie, Fernando Alonso, P7.
It was nice to see him back on form, to be fair, so I can't fault you for that one. I myself have gone for Nico Hulkenberg just because it's Nico Hulkenberg doing Nico Hulkenberg things, and my God, we just want to see him in a good car because imagine what he could be capable of if they gave him a good car for more than 5 minutes. On the flip side of things, Jacob, you and I both have the same spinner. Let's see if Chiara also has the same one. Who is your spinner for the weekend, Chiara?
Mine? Oh my goodness. I think my spinner for the weekend is going to be. Well, I did actually want to say Lando, but in my opinion, it's gonna go to. Oh gosh. I would say it's gonna go
Close
to
to think
Lewis
of anyone
Hamilton.
except Lando.
No, I actually didn't think he was my spinner. My spinner was Lewis Hamilton because for me, like Groundhog versus that car. I mean,
Surely
it
that
was
should be
inevitable.
Ferrari then, rather than Hamilton.
Wildlife,
Hamilton didn't
yeah.
build the car.
Hamilton did not build the car, but I think it was
Maybe,
his mindset for me. I think after
maybe
that.
the upgrade for the weekend coming up will just be little sledgehammers that come out, so you can just whack them before they get too close to the car. The next time,
He
so they
wasn't
can
the only
make
one
it.
personally victimized by a groundhog during that race. I know in IMSA somebody did hit the car hit the groundhog as well. I had issues with a rabbit in WEC with my BMW drivers.
Yes,
Unfortunately,
they
that
held a
did
minute
cause.
silence on commentary for that around 3:30 in the morning, I believe.
I was there when that happened, and I was like, "Oh no, not another bunny," because I remembered Pierre Gasly and Imola. But yeah, Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton mainly because I think Charles is still quite consistent, but Charles is also engraved in this culture, in this Ferrari culture. He's been through
Whether
it
he
up and
likes it
down,
or
and
not,
whether he
at
likes
this
it or not,
point.
exactly.
Jacob, obviously we've gone for Lando Norris. We know why. Silliness
Yeah,
and quite amusing the speed with which there was kind of a chain reaction as soon as it happened. I went, that's very 2011. Then I heard the commentary go, oh, that was very 2011. And then the Claude room, Georgia, well, that's just like 2011. Like, is there an echo in here? It's reverberating throughout everywhere. And then obviously the internet also, and like, it is pretty much the same corporate picture. So we don't need to go on to that anymore.
no. I do apologise
Prediction.
for being a bit of a hypocrite. I did say 2 minutes ago that we like to be different, and I've chosen someone exactly the same. But I feel like for a moment like this, I think you can allow me to have the same one because he has to be the spinner.
I will allow it. Predictions review. I got a point for George Russell's pole position. Was not expecting to get that, to be perfectly honest. Nor was Fraser, I'm sure, expecting to get a point for his Antonelli P3 prediction coming into this weekend. Jacob, you did get a point for Verstappen finishing in second, so maybe the most sensible prediction of the lot, but you can still take credit for it nonetheless. 0 points for fastest lap and 0 points for wild prediction. So we did all right, considering the normal standards with which we do well on the podcast for predictions. Fantasy F1 review wise for Canada, Hope led the way with 222 points. Goretzka with 210 points in second, and Benjamin JKC1 in third with 197 points. My on the curves IndyCar team finished in P7. My normal on the curves team somehow finished in P10. Eddie May's Catbirds team finished in P14. Jesse's pod team, his highest team, Jacob, was down in P18. He's having a great weekend there.
Having a
And
goofy
Chiara, the
weekend.
team, well, yes, Chiara, the team that you'll enjoy for the content of the team, but not for the name or their performance this weekend, was Red Bull Rejects down in P63 of 63 with -3 points for the weekend. So it didn't do too well there.
That's some effort, that is.
Yes. Overall, Lando leads with 1,888 points. Detiklias is in second with 1,831 points. And La Victory is in third with 1,764 points. Can't grow a moustache. Ellie Mae's team is in P7. On the curves has moved up to P16. Mixing Pot is up in P23, and not surprisingly, Kiwi Burners is still down in P63. The reason they're still there, for those of you that don't know, is because it still has Jack Toohan and Liam Lawson in the team, but Liam Lawson in his Red Bull outfit. So they're both deactive and are not scoring any points whatsoever for that particular team. And despite our many pleas on the podcast for the person responsible for that account to change it, They have not, and are probably going to be bottom for quite a while, because I think they're at least 400 points off 62nd place at this point. So I don't think it's going to go well for them at this rate. That is all we've got time for on this week's episode, though. We'll be back next week with a preview for the Austrian Grand Prix. In the meantime, Jacob, if people want a bit more from you, where can they find you? Are there any kind of pub-related content sort of things that you can promote by any chance?
Yes, there are. You may find me in a local pub in your area, depending on where that is. I do travel the country. But if you are interested in more pub-related activities, obviously there is pub chat. But apart from that, you can find me on Instagram at Long Live the Local Pub, where I travel the country and further afield, reviewing local pubs, sampling beers, and giving everything about the pub a rating out of 10.
Good stuff as well. Chiara, what about yourself? You do one or two things, I hear.
Well, you can find my own podcast called Chaos in the Paddock on all social media sites. And if you want to follow along on my antics around the paddock, I have a TikTok and Instagram account called Chaos Races, or even just on my main Chiara_Martin1.
As for myself, you can find me over on the Cut, where I've got an interview out at the moment with Turkish rallycar driver Senna Air. I'll have another episode of On the Cut's IndyCar, where we're reviewing the St. Louis Oval race from last weekend, which was a lot of good fun, later this week. And I've also got a new interview on Instagram with Italian racing rally driver Igor Vidori. So I've got a bit of stuff going on there, all just through On the Curves. As I said, we'll be back for a preview of the Austrian Grand Prix in just over a week, so we'll see you then. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.